Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Cybersecurity Recruiter podcast. Today, I'm joined by Chad. Chad, how you doing, man?
Good.
Good. For everyone listening, the podcast gods have been working against us. This has been rearranged a few times, and which is all my fault. And me and Chad have been having a few technical issues, but we're here now, mate, aren't we?
Absolutely. Good to see you.
Yeah, likewise, Chad. So I'm just going to do you a bit of an intro for the listeners, my friend. Feel free to correct me or shout at me or scream at me if I get anything wrong. But back in 2007, started off as a systems technician for Tech Team Global, then progressed on to STG Inc., where you was a sysadmin for a good year and a half. Then moved on to Bocor Inc. You were there for almost 5.5 years. Started off as a sysadmin slash pen tester, then moved on to be a network analyst and a pen tester, and then finished as a pen tester and a security analyst, which I imagine would have given you a great holistic view on security. Then progressed on to Booz Allen. You were a PT, pen testing team lead. You were also, this was around the 2018 2020 mark, a member of the SYNAC Red Team for over 2 years. You were also an instructor at Triology Education, and currently you hold the position of manager at RedLens Infosec, which has been, you've had that posting for almost a decade now. Welcome to the show again, Chad, and thanks for joining, mate. How did I get your intro about right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's how the resume reads. Appreciate the opportunity to come and speak with you.
Yeah, no worries at all, mate. And it's nice to have you on. I'm looking forward to unpacking your journey. I'm looking forward to hearing how you've progressed. I know from different outreach I've had from listeners over LinkedIn and stuff like that this type of thing really does help getting an insight into other people's journeys and how they've been successful and how they've broke in and things like that. It's helpful to everyone, especially since kind of remote working's become so prevalent. I think we need this more than ever. But I'll start where I always like to start, mate, which is I know I've done you a bit of an intro, but if you could tell me who you are and what you've been up to over the years and what you get up to professionally, mate, that'd be awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah, as you said, I'm Chad Wheeler, manager of the RedLens Infosec division at Campus Guard. But before I get into what I currently do, I'd like to take a moment and explain how I got here, because I think that I get the question a lot. People asking, how do I become a pen tester? And I think there's a million different answers, right? There's not one direct path or one correct way of doing it. I've always been interested in computers. I spent a lot of time on them in the 90s, the AOL days, what I'll call the good old days. Middle school, I was really fascinated with Kevin Mitnick. I wrote an English paper on hacking. I gave the verbal presentation in my class and never forget, the English teacher, she took me out in the hallway and she said she was real concerned I was going down a dark path. She didn't let me continue my presentation, but at least she did grade my paper fairly. Honestly, that probably helped me out in the long run. Time is young. And then in high school, I was torn. I was torn between the two things that I was passionate about, computers and mechanics. So loved to work on cars, trucks, motorcycles, things like that. So we had a speaker that came in from a motorcycle mechanics school, and I was pretty intrigued with what they had to say. Called up the local Harley dealership and job shadowed an old school Harley tech. And after that, my mind was made up. That's what I was going to do. So I went to school for that, became a master technician in just 3 years, and frankly, the pay was crap. I decided to go back to school. I believe that was 2006. Got my associate's degree in IT network and security management. I did have to take a pay cut to get into the field. I was making slightly more at the Harley dealership. But came on, as you said, with Tech Team Global as a contractor for John Deere. And I'll never forget the first 3 weeks thinking, man, I don't know about this. Like, I thought I was in over my head. We were supporting over 200 applications, most of which I knew nothing about. There's a few calls about Outlook and such, but all these applications hadn't heard about it. Introduced to knowledge bases at the time, and so that helped. But I'm glad I stuck it out. I was quickly promoted to tier 1.5 is what they called it. So that was email support, answering voicemails, supporting the tier 1 agents. And then they had an opening, which I applied for. And 9 months after working there, I was promoted to tier 2 support. That was pretty exciting. So I got to go on site at a 4 million square foot John Deere factory. They gave me a golf cart, they gave me a pager and an office. But it was pretty sweet. I was able to drive around the factory. I was able to see a lot of the processes and the assembly of the tractors, just waiting for the pager to go off. And that's notifying me that we had a ticket to work and go out there and take care of business. My wife was in the Army. So after that, we ended up going to New York for a short bit, transferred up there, did some job interviews, wasn't there long enough to land anything. But I did go back to school for my bachelor's degree. So in between and during that transition, decided something was missing after the associate's degree and realized, hey, I enjoyed learning. So went back to that. Like I said, we were only there for a short bit. She ended up getting reassigned to Fort Huachuca, Arizona. So we moved, stay-at-home dad for a couple of months. Again, man, something's missing. And so I started applying for jobs. I got a call one night, 8 p.m., asked me if I wanted to come in the next day for a job interview. And so I did, got that job. As a domain administrator, government contractor, and pretty memorable too. During my time there, and that was with STG, during my time there, we were sitting in a cubicle farm and there was a loud, obnoxious laughter from the other side of the cube wall. And I asked my coworker, I was like, who's that? And she explained that they're the CERT, the computer emergency response team, that they do incident response, pen testing, monitoring, and whatnot. Hadn't heard of the organization before, but it was that moment that I'm like, I want to go work for them. And so I was keeping my eyes open, and the job was posted, opened up, and applied for that. It was as a system admin, right up my alley for the organization with my skill set, but knew that it could potentially lead to some other roles, which of course it did. But the one thing I want to point out about landing that role, interesting fact, was that the lead of the system admin team happened to be my mentor, and I had less experience than a lot of the other candidates that they had interviewed during the process. But he told me a short time after I had started working there, he said I was able to admit when I didn't know something, didn't know the answers. And apparently some of the other candidates just wanted to beat around the bush to answer the questions. I had no problem being upfront and saying, I don't know the answer. I can go find it. And I think that's so critical in roles today. There, I was learning as much as I could. I was shoulder surfing for things, watching things that I didn't know how to do, learn patch management, vulnerability management, firewalls, creating baseline images, group policy. We did physical server installs, how to make patch cables, a lot of stuff in that sysadmin role because we were a real small organization. Learned VMware from the ground up, command line. I was not good with the command line. Always looking for a GUI solution to the problem. But my mentor, Crisco, he forced me he said, for every problem you can solve with a GUI, try to do it via command line because it'll just make you that much stronger. So that and scripting and disastigs, if anybody knows about disastigs, like if they're rough. But I requested to be trained as a backup pen tester. So again, the organization was small. They had a team that did pen testing, but they weren't always available, or sometimes they were all out on missions. And so I said, hey, I'd love to be trained as a pen tester. And so I was able to get cross-trained that way, but pen testing was really what interested me. So it was, I think, a unique opportunity to get a shot at it without that training, or at least having prior experience. And then a short bit later, applied internally for a network analyst job, got that, continued to help out as a pen tester, learned a little bit of a different skill set there. And people were leaving the organization, for whatever their reasons were, but I was able to apply once an actual full-time pen tester position opened, and I was afforded the opportunity to join that team full-time. Once I became the pen tester, had that pen tester role, looking back, hindsight wasn't as glorious as I thought it would be, but I did learn a lot, a lot of skills, a lot of different things. And then I decided to continue learning, and I wanted more. I was craving more, wanted to do more great things, and learned about the pen testing with Cali course. So that's the training leading up to the OSCP. I had no idea what I was in for. Absolutely no idea. A few of my coworkers were taking the training. They didn't progress to the OSCP, to the certification. But I'm like, what the heck? Let's go ahead and go for it. It was frustrating. It was gratifying at the same time. I learned so much, taught me quite a bit. Mind you, I've never really used it in a real world pen test, but there's an awesome feeling that you get when you're learning about buffer overflows. You're inserting the shell code, and you're creating an admin account and getting access to a box. Real world, it's much easier than that. I've never, like I said, had to do a buffer overflow on a live engagement, but
Yeah, cool.
nevertheless, at Fort Huachuca, the contract I was on was up. And so that was with Bocor. You'll see I was with Booz Allen, or you mentioned it, for a
Mm.
short period of time. Word on the street was new company's going to win. And then you essentially had to interview for your own position. I didn't really like that. I applied for, no kidding, at least 100 companies during that transitional period. Probably had 30, 40 interviews. And weirdly, I didn't feel discouraged, right? I hear that a lot. People, what am I doing wrong? And they really get down on themselves because they've interviewed or applied for a lot of different places, maybe not getting interviews, or interviews and not getting hired. But I took it as an opportunity to hone my interview skills, because I felt like I was interviewing them as well, right?
Okay.
They're not just interviewing me, but I'm interviewing them. I've worked for big companies, I've worked for small companies, but I just wanted to make sure that move was a good fit. I still had my role where I was, but I wanted to make sure that move was a good fit. I had my OSCP along with a bunch of other certs, and I wanted something remote. So that's what I was looking for there. Interviewed with Campus Guard. They explained that a unique opportunity too. I was going to be the first pen tester on staff with the company, and I would be expected to build out this pen testing service. They had people that were doing pen tests, but nobody that had the experience or the knowledge that I had at the time. It was daunting. It was exciting at the same time, but there was a lot of freedom there, and that really excited me. So, been with the company 8.5 years now. We built
Mm.
an awesome team. We're 11 people large on the team that I've got here, and we've got 100% retention rate. So
Mm.
pretty proud about
Cool.
that.
Cool. Yeah, Chad, we can come on to the team stuff in a bit. There's a few things you've said there that I really want to dig down into in terms of you breaking in that I think will really help the listeners. And it was really interesting for me to see how I find so many people in the market. I think pen tester is probably one of the most popular things. Like I want that, and they go straight in at pen tester. And there's a few things you said there, and I'd like to get your opinion on it. Do you think the first kind of question? I'm going to ask you two or three in one here, but the first question is: do you think it's a bad idea to go straight in trying to be a pen tester because it's so competitive these days? And also, from listening to what you've said, then you've I don't know if it was by accident or on purpose, but you're within a company, you're working as a sysadmin, and you've then tapped someone on the shoulder. I think the exact words you used were you requested to be trained as a pen tester. And for everyone listening, that's going to be 10 times easier to get that request accepted if you're already working for that organization as a sysadmin. So was that something you did on purpose? Did it make it easier? Do you think it's a good idea? Do you think to go straight in as a pen tester is just being unrealistic these days? Sorry to hit you with about 5 questions in one, Chad, but what do you think?
Yeah, I'll try to hit them. I don't think it was planned by any means. Obviously, hearing what the organization did, I knew I wanted to work for the. Once I was in the organization using the skill set that I had, that was the system administration, I found out or realized that, hey, they need backup pen testers. And of course, that excited me. So I'm like, yeah, absolutely. When I say I requested, I volunteered. I wanted the opportunity to do that. And from there, it just went on. I think that the first question you asked was, is it a good idea to jump right into pen testing? Got a lot of people that ask how to do it. I've given my path and what it is. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think that it depends on the individual, right? Follow a couple of people on LinkedIn and watch their journey and how they've done things. And they are doing some awesome stuff. They jump in doing either bug bounties or somewhere they're wedging and infiltrating, getting that first opportunity, whether it's a junior pen test role or something else that leads to that type of work. I don't think that it'd be fair for anybody to say you cannot jump in like that, because people do. I think it's more valuable for most people if you do hold other technical roles, blue team type stuff, system
Mm,
administrator, whatever that is, system network, because when you're trying to break things as pen testers do, you really need to understand how they can be broken, right? Whether it's the methods or the avenues, trying to understand that will help you identify, okay, this is the path that I'm going to take. And conversely, when you're reporting that to the customers, you also need to tell them how to fix it, right? Having the experience on the blue team or the administrative side of things, I think will help in letting them know how to mitigate the vulnerabilities that you've identified during the pen test.
mm. Yeah, cool, Chad. Thank you, mate. You mentioned there as well, Chad. Obviously, managing a team of 11. You mentioned there about really good bug bounty platforms. What kind of thing are you looking for, and would you recommend for people? Like, what kind of like extracurricular activities are you looking for? Any particular platforms you like to see people on, or you think add the most value? What's your thoughts on that, my friend?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when we hire people, it's pretty selective. The biggest things we're looking for personality and attitude, because I think we can, if the person's a good fit, we can teach them the technical, right? They don't need to be overly technical, the best pen tester around, but we don't want to change the dynamic that our team has. But when looking for those people, it's going to be it's not one thing. It's not education over certification or certification over education. But what are you doing that kind of paints the picture that you're passionate about what you're doing? Are you doing bug bounties? Do you have repos that you're creating tools, no matter how intricate or simplistic it could be? What are you doing to showcase what you can do? And those things also lead to better skill sets, right? So you're doing them maybe as a learning process, but what are you doing to show this is who I am? I think there's a lot to it. I hear the debate about the do I need a degree or do I need a certification, and people that really talk down about either one. But for me, it's the holistic picture, understanding what do you come to the table with. But like I say, attitude, personality is probably the top of the list. That's
Mm.
not something you can teach.
No, it's not, mate. And for everyone listening, I'm hearing this more and more. It was last week. I was on a client call. We're doing some pen tester stuff for them, and I know the hiring manager really well. He's been on the podcast actually, and we spent about 45 minutes talking about cultural fit and personality for a highly technical role that is a pen tester. And I'm just emphasizing that point, Chuck, because I know that's how you feel from what you just said, and other conversations we've had. But it's, I think for people listening, I think they might be shocked at just how important that element, isn't it? It means a lot, doesn't it? And like I think these days, especially in a consulting environment, that particular piece, that communication piece, that culture, personality fit, it matters these days, mate, doesn't it?
Yep, absolutely,
Mm,
100%.
yeah, cool. All right, my friend. Talk to me about this 100% retention rate. We've done a bit for people breaking in, and you're managing a team. So for everyone listening that's wants to manage a team or is managing a team, or maybe they're having some issues, obviously dealing with people, it's not always straightforward. Any tips on that retention rate? Anything you're doing within your organization that could help other leaders that are listening when this goes out?
Yeah. I think it starts with trust, right? I trust my team. They trust me. I don't have a dictatorship here. When I say my team, I don't mean in terms of ownership. It's our team. If somebody's got a good idea to present or a policy or process change, I ask them to present it to the team. If it makes sense, we might try it for a while. If it doesn't make sense, we scrap it. If it does, we stick with it and we change up how we do things. Between that and like I mentioned earlier, being selective when we hire people, we're still a small company, so every new hire is crucial.
Mm,
Attitude, personality, like I said before, we need to make sure that they're a good fit. We've got a great team dynamic, just absolutely awesome. And so we need to make sure that we're adding to that and extending that. I'm not oblivious to the fact that there may be someday that someone wants to decide to move on from our team, whether it's for knowledge, experience, or satisfaction. But I feel like if they leave better than they came join the team, it's still a positive thing. Our teams truly become friends. We have a family feel throughout the entire organization, not just our team, but we all live in different parts of the country, and I feel like we're friends first and foremost. But I think through the selective hiring process, because we don't staff up quickly like some of the larger companies, they'll bring on a handful, maybe 10, 20 pen testers for large projects or something. They grow pretty quickly. But as we know, when priorities shift or economy takes a downturn, layoffs can happen. And because of what we do and how selective we are, how strategic, I would say, we
mm,
are. Campus Guard's 15-year history, we've never had to lay anybody off, not just my
mm.
team who's got the 100% retention rate, but the Campus Guard as a whole has never had to lay anybody off, which I think is amazing. That adds to job security for, I think, one of the reasons why people decide to stay with us.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. And I think, Chad, I think when you're smaller, like you just alluded to, that it matters even more. Like, it's safe to say we agree that culture is
Yeah.
everything. If you've got 4 people and you hire 2, or you've got 11 and you hire 4 or 5, that's 50% of your culture. Like,
It,
that's a big deal.
Yeah. And at that point, how much time and resources are you dedicating to train up those people, whether it's on company processes or whether it's on technical ability? So, as a pen tester, you learn from others. You will self learn, but you're going to learn the most amazing things when you're working side by side with other pen testers. And so, how we conduct most of our pen tests are we do them in partners, we do them in
Mm,
pairs. So that way, if one person finds something, doesn't quite know where to run with it, 9.5 times out of 10, the other tester knows what they can do with that, but they're strategizing, they're brainstorming throughout the entire pen test. I think that adds value to
mm.
each of our pen tests and just adds that much more value to the customer.
Just for people listening, and for me as well, so they're working in pairs. Is that in a virtual sense? They're checking in on Slack and Zoom, or are they actually physically together, or how is that interaction maintained throughout the course of that engagement?
For the two pen testers, yes, we use Microsoft Teams. We're a Teams shop, so we've got channels in there that are dedicated just for the pen test. I guess there's similar things out there that people use, but that helps them be right there. They may jump on video calls or audio calls to bounce ideas back and forth, screen
Mm,
share through the process. I think each pair has their own process, whether they have their own, hey, you're going to take this half and you're going to take this half and then we swap, or maybe they take different tactics and tools and different things that they're using. I let them, again, not a dictatorship, let them figure out what works best for them, and they're hitting home runs doing it. So I don't
mm,
want to change what's not broken there.
Yeah, no, cool. This is a bit of a bit. I know other people listening it will help, but a bit more of a selfish question in the sense that how are you managing remote teams? You mentioned trust. Is there any other kind of tips over the years that you've found useful for managing a team remotely?
Yeah. I would say that I'm fortunate. I'm fortunate with the team, each of the pen testers that we have. Because I say, if anybody's listening that's ever interviewed with us, you've probably heard me say, we're all adults here, right? I'm here to do a job. You're coming on to do a job. We just need to do what we need to do. And as a
Mm,
pen tester, that's do the pen test, right? So I think in terms of managing remote workers, at least here, we don't have a core set of hours. We've got customers in Australia and all over the US, so we varying time frames and time zones. But if somebody's not a morning person, they might decide, hey, I want to get up at 8, 9 o'clock and get online and start my day. I am a morning person, so I start at 5:30 in the morning. So I think that again, by understanding we're all adults, we've all got a job. As long as they know what their job is, they know what the expectation of the pen test is, they do what they need to do. I've never had an issue, but I think that again, I feel fortunate for that. I know that the larger companies, they say after COVID, they're bringing people back from remote or requiring that. And I think that shows, in my mind, a little bit of a level of distrust that you've allowed them to work when it was beneficial to the company remotely, but now you want them back into the office. And maybe there's other layers to that, but that's what I see at face value. We've been a 100% remote company even before COVID, right? When Campus Guard started, everybody was remote. We've got security advisors that live all over the country, and then of course our team as well. So we don't have any central office. So to us, the remote work was not new. So everybody's
mm,
brought in, understands this is what it is. Sometimes we miss the water cooler chat that you might have, like
mm,
in an office setting, but I think once you get past that, it's a bit unique. You don't have a lot of the interruptions that you would normally have somebody stopping by your cube. You can at least isolate if there's too many Teams messages. Shut Teams down. Let the team know, hey, I'm going silent, like I am for this podcast. I told them, I said, I'm going to close down email and Teams, right? And you can really focus on doing what you're doing. I think you can do a lot better quality work that way.
mm.
Maybe not everybody. Everybody probably doesn't operate that way, but I think for a large majority of people, it works.
Yeah, yeah, cool. That core not having core hours things, people love that. I've got clients that do that as well, and people love that. It's so good.
It's
Yeah.
another benefit, right? Thomas, it's you add the benefit of we're not an 8 to 5 shop. You don't have to clock in at 8 and clock out at 5 or
Mm,
stay later, right? We're here to do a job. You start the job, you manage your time effectively, you get the job done, you deliver the report at the high caliber that we expect, and everybody's happy. That's what I think also drives customers back to us is they may say, hey, these core systems need to be tested outside of business hours. Can you guys do that? We can, absolutely. We'll work with you, where there's sensitivities on the network. And our guys are great too, where they're like, sure, yeah, I'll log on and work third shift to do it because that's the customer request. We don't get that often, right? But guys are great and flexible, and in turn, they have flexibility too. They want to work later in the day, great. They want to work early in the morning, go ahead. So
Yeah, wicked. Yeah, definitely, mate. Well, I was going to ask you. I mentioned when the English teacher stopped. You mentioned at the top of the show your English teacher stopped you. I bet that has made you want to do security even more, didn't it? Made you
yeah.
want to rebel.
Yeah, I mean, again, Kevin Mitnick. I actually met him in Phoenix a handful of years ago at a conference, and that was, maybe this is fanboyish to say, but it was a highlight for me just because
Yeah.
I was so interested. I was intrigued by the stories that back in the day you could call up Radio Shack and say, "Hey, this is Joe over at store 132. Got a customer here. Computers are down. I need the information." He placed an order, but I don't have his address and his phone number, right? And you could socially engineer information from people, and I was like, wow, you can do that. And so it really lit a fire under me to the point where I'm like, man, I'm learning about all this cool stuff. I want to tell all my classmates. And Ms. Young was probably right. If she hadn't at least cautioned me, I might have a different story today. But I'm super glad that she did. I'm super glad things have worked out the way they have.
We've mentioned how much you value communication, personality, cultural fit. We've also mentioned that it's a really important, underrated, if you like, skill within security these days. What do you look for in a person in terms of the sort of person they are? What type of communication skills do you look for? Any kind of tips and hints on that front for folks listening?
Yeah, I learned by doing, right? I need to tee it up that way. I learned by doing. I may not be the best communicator at times, but I think that practicing wherever you can is probably the best thing that you can do, whether it's, you don't report writing, write reports. If somebody says, hey, can you look over this document and provide feedback, or we need to, create something, take it upon yourself. It may be uncomfortable, but volunteer to do that because you're going to get better at that. To be honest with you, public speaking wasn't really ever my thing. I'm sure I've probably said quite a bit throughout this podcast, but I think the more you do it, the better you get at it. You can hear yourself back. I gave a presentation in public speaking class sophomore year in high school, and listened to that thing back, and I think I said 100 times. So hopefully I'm well under 100 today, but I think that you need to try to do the things that you're not good at. You need to practice. They say practice makes perfect. I wouldn't say that. I would say practice makes you better. And you can't get better without doing that. I personally don't have experience with it, but I have heard the recommendation of joining Toastmasters. The guy I did a presentation, or I guess talking to the students at my son's school recently, where industry career professionals come in and talk to the kids about their profession and all that. And his recommendation was Toastmasters because the question came up. It does cost a little bit of money for membership, but they do public speaking, leadership organization. They help members develop the skills, confidence, self awareness. If you just Google Toastmaster, there's a ton of information about it. They've got organizations, or I guess chapters, all over the country. Uh, I think that'd probably be a good place to start if you don't like public speaking.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
it. I just can't get it out of my vocabulary.
Toastmasters. Yeah, I've had that mentioned on the show before, so yeah, that's definitely for something for listeners to check out. But essentially, Chad, what you're saying is it's like it's doing the stuff that you don't want to do, or doing the stuff that you're not very good at. Like essentially, if you just want to do the stuff that you really get good at all the time, long term, that's just not going to be very good for your growth and your progression. And the more you're prepared to push the boundaries and do the stuff you don't like, or you feel uncomfortable doing, or you don't like, that is by definition when you are growing. So it is just creating a good and healthy habit in terms of doing the stuff you just don't want to do, or doing the stuff you feel really uncomfortable and awkward doing. That's how you improve, mate, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that if you don't report writing, you're not going to be a good pen tester because it's not about breaking into the boxes. It's about conveying the information that you found to the customer effectively so that way they can use it to advance their security maturity. They don't know what they don't know. So you're there to tell them. If you can't communicate that, and typically, again, they're most pen tests, you're delivering a report and that's the first communication back to them. Might be doing report review calls or presentations to an executive board or something. So then that comes into the speaking aspect of it. So I think that you have to at least be comfortable enough to do those two things effectively. But when you talk about doing things you don't like and whether you're going to progress or not, I was never a web app pen tester. I was never real strong with web apps. I loved, and my thing was network pen tests. You could have one area that you're real strong in from that respect. If you're good at web apps, you're good at APIs, mobile app, maybe and I think it depends on the organization you're with. Because if you are with a big firm that has 100 pen testers, they might have a need for a handful of people to specialize in just that. Here, we're still a smaller group. I've got about half the team that is like absolutely excellent with web apps, APIs, mobile apps. They have gotten a lot of CVEs recently awarded to them through their work pen testing customers. And then we've got other guys that are like, hey, my passion is with networking, but we do cross train through the different disciplines. So want to make sure that they at least understand and they're pretty good at all the things coming to us because we do have a lot of different, sometimes unique requests from customers. I think everybody's interested in physical pen testing and social engineering. And so I want to make sure that we can go out there and evangelize to our customers to be able to have that. But I think that, yes, you should be able to volunteer and say, hey, I don't know this. I'll go out and learn it, or doing that on your own. There's nothing stopping you when, using air quotes here, clock off the clock for a job. If you're passionate about it, a lot of the guys, they're doing training at night or they're researching things in the Infosec community. If you totally unplug after your day, call it the 8 to 5 day, and I think you're doing yourself a disservice too in this career field because it moves so quick. There's so many new technologies, breaches, vulnerabilities, tools that get released. If you're not staying up on that, you're just tunnel vision throughout your workday. You are going to be behind.
Yeah, 100%, mate. It's one of the things we look at when we're recruiting is what are people doing before 9 and after 5, or before
Yeah.
8 and after 5, or whatever these. It's things move so fast. Do you know as well, Jella? I think as well that people should choose their words carefully. Like like report writing. If you, I know not everyone's into this, but I'm a big believer in kind of mindset and what you tell yourself long term. It kind of sinks in. If you tell yourself enough times that you're bad at writing reports, guess what? You'll probably be bad at writing reports. Whereas if you really go, no, do you know what? I'm going to get better. I'm going to get better. Eventually, you will. And you mentioned you mentioned about buffer overflows at the start of the show. People get into, if we're talking about just pen testing, people get into it so they can pop shells and do various things like that. And you talked about getting good on the on a CLI and stuff like that. That's what I don't imagine many people getting into pen testing going, I want to do this because I want to write the reports. Like it, it probably is a muscle
Yeah.
you're going to have to exercise. So I think choose your words carefully. And if you tell yourself you'll get better and you put some time in and you're consistent and intentional, guess what? I think you probably will get better.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that because we want to make sure that our reports go out and they're of the utmost value and good, right? We don't want it to go out and be like, darn, it shouldn't have said that. And so we go through like a peer QA process. So you got the pen test pair. One person, the project lead, is going to take the heavy lifting of the report writing. And then we've also got the other resource that's on the pen testing that they've got input and additions and things that they're putting into the report. But then they QA it, then goes over to another peer, another pen tester that wasn't on the engagement. So having no knowledge of what they actually did on the pen test, can they follow through and understand what this means from a technical aspect, but at the same time, as an outsider, gets QA'd and then it goes through another round of QA through a non-technical person. Our customer relationship managers, they look at the reports from somebody that's, again, non-technical, they're not a pen tester, and have the question of, so what does this mean to me? You've explained all these things, but what does it mean to me before it gets delivered to that customer? Because we want to make sure that it's good. And so instead of just making changes throughout the QA process, we leave comments or we track the changes. So that person that wrote it can actually see what is being suggested. Maybe it's verbiage, maybe it's punctuation, or maybe it just doesn't make sense, but they understand where those deficiencies were so that way they can get better at report writing from the next one and thereon. So
I like that, Chad. And is that like a continuous thing for everyone, or just when people come in? Or
no, it's continuous. We're
mm,
all learning. We're all,
mm,
like you say, if you don't want to get complacent, I think we've got tools. I'm sure most people do. Either they use a Word document as a template or they've got report writing tools. And I think that's how I actually met you, Thomas, was commented on a Ghostwriter post that you had.
mm,
We use Ghostwriter as our report writing tool, and you build that library of findings. And I think that once the verbiage is in there, a lot of people might just plop it in, but you still need to make sure it fits what you're doing, what you found. It's tailored to that customer, and so we can't get complacent with it. I think that it's going to be a forever thing, at least as long as I'm here. The extensive QA process continues, because I think you can't ever say that you're an expert at writing the reports, right? Give somebody else a chance to look at that and see if we can improve it. And if nothing else, the person QAing it is probably reading like, wow, okay, I see how
mm.
that chain worked. And they're learning from the process too. So I think it's beneficial for both sides.
Yeah, definitely. And I love the fact it's continuous as well, Chad, because I say I do think it's an element. We know way more goes into a pen test than a report, but at the end of the day, someone in C-suite who's non-technical, that's probably all, not all they see it as, but it probably is for some of them. It's massively vital. I'm just going to come on to market conditions, Chad, and doing the job I do, I chat to a lot of senior folks like yourself and leaders and business owners, and it's interesting to hear how you're getting on in the market and what you feel market conditions are. Just before this pod, I spoke to a chap who's they're doing really well. And but what was interesting for me, I said to him like, "Why are you doing so well?" And one of the founders, his job is just to get out there and shake a load of hands. So he's going out there and just meeting a load of people, just going to events, and I think he's been doing it for a while, and it's kicked in. But I'm interested to hear how you're getting on, how you're finding the market, any tips for navigating these market conditions for kind of leaders and business owners and stuff like that. What are your thoughts, mate?
Real quick, the comment on getting out and shaking hands. Our CEO, Harvey, he says people do business with people, and people do business with people that they like and trust. So we're real big on that, right? Yes, you're getting out there shaking hands, but you need to make sure that the customers can trust you, that they like what we're doing for them. We have a relationship. They're not just customers. We have a relationship. I think that's one of the big things. But to answer the latter part of the question, I think there's two sides. So the economy plays a big part in it. It largely affects the market. We've seen significant layoffs last year. I had a figure that I saw a couple of weeks ago. It was large, the amount of layoffs in the IT sector. In 2023, with all those layoffs, we added 3 people to our team. So we went from 8 to 11. I believe 2 of those people were victim to layoffs. So it may not seem like a lot, but again, we hire strategically. So all the frameworks like PCI, HIPAA, recently GLBA with the release of the safeguards rule help drive the requirements for penetration testing. So every time there's a breach, ransomware attack, or whatever hits the news, organizations are seeking out the services. We love when customers come to us proactively and not reactively. But I think that because we aren't a firm that's one and done, talk about relationship, we're trying to provide that service and that value to them, understand what's going to move the mark on your security maturity. Most of our customers, they buy consulting hours or annual support agreements. So it isn't just one and done. They're with us
Mm,
throughout the entirety of a year. Some customers sign 3 or 5 year contracts, a long-term relationship right up front. But technology changes, strategic priorities, they change, and we're here to help the customers. I was told a couple of weeks ago our renewal rate for those annual support contracts is 98.6%. So, I
wicked.
mean, Campus Guard's been around for 15 years. Actually, this year we're celebrating 15 years anniversary, and 98.6% renewal rate amongst our customers. To me, that's fantastic. And
Yeah.
so I think that the words you've used in the past is killing it. I feel like we are killing it, but I think it's because of how strategic we are. with the hiring, with the relationships that we build, truly understanding our customer needs and not selling them something that they don't need, right? If somebody says, hey, I want a red team engagement, and the first question might be, when was your last pen test? And if they say, oh, we did one back in 2018, my perspective, my opinion, and I'll continue to hear them out, is you might not be ready for a red team engagement, right? If you're not doing regular vulnerability scanning, you might not be ready for a pen test. So understanding the customer needs versus just selling them whatever they're asking for is another big thing.
Yeah, definitely. And congrats, mate. 15 years. You're going to have a party? You're going to have some beers?
I hope so. It's hard. I think the company, we might be pushing 50 people overall across the entire company. And I would have loved to get everybody together and a family picnic type of thing, party, but that we'll probably do something virtual because the schedule problems and things. So
Yeah. Okay. Well, beers over Zoom's good, or
yeah,
Teams.
absolutely.
Cool. All right, my friend. Any tips on content to consume in general for career progression, learning development, stuff to consume to enhance communication skills? What sort of online resources are you tapping into, mate, that could be helpful for the listeners?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm consuming constantly, even as a manager, right?
Mm.
Trying to stay up, but consume as much as you can, I would say. You need to remember that communication skills is writing, speaking, active listening, others, but reading good quality articles will help you pick out what makes them good, right? Why do you feel this is a good article? And it could lend you some guidance on if you wanted to start your own blog, thereby increasing or practicing your written skills. Get feedback from friends, coworkers. Talked about the QA process. That's a big one we have. But even if you write a blog or something, shoot it over to your coworkers and see what they think. Get some critique and be able to take some hefty critique too, right? Hopefully they're not just all saying, hey, this is great. Yeah, that's wonderful. And it looks like a second grader wrote it. I would say make sure that you're asking others. And I would probably give a bit of a shout out to Black Hills Infosec. They've built an amazing community. Sorry, dog.
It's all right, mate. It's
Um,
podcasting. It's
yeah,
podcasting after COVID, mate. It's standard.
I was really happy. She came and laid down right next to me, and so I
No,
was like,
don't worry.
"Oh, she's going to be good through this." But
No, mate, we don't.
fair enough. But yeah, Black Hills, they amazing community. They put on weekly webinars. They've got the anti-siphon training that they're doing, blog posts. Discord has a ton of resources out there. They put on Wild West Hacking Fest. I went to the first couple, and then COVID hit, and so I've been attending virtually. And our team attends that conference heavily in South Dakota, so a great thing. And they host speakers from other companies, and they give a platform. So anybody that's breaking in, I know John Strand and the guys over there, guys and gals, sorry, that they give that platform no matter where you reside with your technical abilities. So I think that's a great thing that they're doing for the community as a whole, and I absolutely recommend anybody to follow them and their content. So
No, Def Chad, they do some pretty cool stuff just related to specifically to recruitment and breaking in and career stuff as well. So yeah, no, definitely shout out to Black Hills. And just to pick you up on the point as well, you mentioned about reading good quality articles and starting your own blog. Personal branding and doing stuff on LinkedIn. I always say that to anyone that's wanting to get stuff out there or write stuff. If you're reading these articles, it's great for your own self development, but it's also great for content. It's also great for reinforcing pre-existing knowledge. So I just think that enhancing your ability to articulate yourself in a written form, which is great for report writing. I just think the benefits are endless of consuming the right things, and there's no excuse these days. We're living in the age of the internet. It's everywhere, isn't it?
yep,
So,
absolutely.
so yeah, cool. What book has had the most positive impact on your career so far, Chad?
I'm ashamed to say that I don't get much time to read books anymore. I've got a ton of books laying around the office and the house that I haven't even cracked open. I leave one on the table or on my desk just thinking if I get 5 or 10 minutes, I'll crack it open and start it. And just between work and family and life and stuff, I really don't get a whole lot of time. When I traveled more, I used to take a book with me. I used to spend all my time in the airport and on the plane reading, but it's been a while. I would say a book called Gung Ho, Turn on the People in Any Organization. I believe it's by Ken Blanchard and Sheldon. I can't remember the last name, but it's a great book. It's helped me in my leadership role, and I wouldn't want to spoil the book, but I think it's a must read. If you're a manager, you're a team lead, a C-level, or the like, I think that if anybody picks up the book, reach out to me and let me know what you think. But I think that it's really great in understanding motivation for those that work with you.
Yeah, cool. I've heard that mentioned again. I've actually heard that mentioned on some recruitment podcasts. It's like it's a general leadership book, is it, for really getting rocking
Yeah.
and rolling? Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. My uncle, he's a big reader. He recommended a bunch of books to me, and I bought 3 of them that he recommended, and this is actually the only one that I read. It's a fairly short book and really great.
Cool. All right then, my friend. And just want to come on to the last couple of questions here. So, future plans, what's on the agenda for the rest of the year in terms of business and things like that? Have you got it all mapped out where you're going on that front, Chad, for the rest of the year?
A lot of times we take, again, being strategic about it, we take it slow. What's the trend for the month? What's the trend for the quarter? What's our outlook look for the rest of the year? We do budgeting and projections and things like that. I can definitely say that I think that our team will probably be growing just at the rate of pen tests, new pen tests that are coming to us. I foresee the trend being continuing where we might add a couple of people each and every year throughout. I think that maybe wouldn't call it a secret sauce, but the recipe that we have, and how we handle or provide service to our customers and our clients is making us successful. We're not ballooning to the point where we have to take a different turn. It's definitely positive growth for sure.
Yeah. Cool. All right, my friend. And then I'm just going to come on to mentors. I think mentors are a huge part of self-development. I always like to ask my guests this question. So, what mentors have you had? What tips have you got for getting a mentor? What are your kind of overall feelings in relation to getting a mentor?
Yeah. It's a great question. I've had, I would say, many mentors over the years, but I feel like the most impactful ones came naturally, meaning that I developed a friendship and they were more than willing to help me along. From Chuck, the old school technician at the Harley dealership, I will absolutely never forget. And some of the things that he taught me. I won't get into that, but Chuck was a great guy. He was a great mentor there. Crisco, at my time at the CERT, he was the one that told me, hey, we interviewed people and you were the only one that said you didn't know. And it was just a small team. I think it might have just been me and him at the time. And a little bit later on, we added a third person. So it was a really small system admin team there. But he was my mentor and the one that pushed me to learn command line CLIs, all the way to my boss here at Campus Guard, Ed Coe. He challenges me, whether I realize it or not. He's constantly teaching me lessons and mentoring me through situations that I might find myself in or needing to deal with. I would say that if you're looking for a mentor, you don't have somebody that you're friends with already and can network with, start networking. Whether you're networking on LinkedIn, there's local groups. I'm sure in most places, especially larger metropolitan areas, local groups, OWASP chapters, local meetups. I think there's one that they meet every month and they go and have beers at the Beer Institute. And one of the guys brings his famous bacon. I've never been up there. I certainly want to get up there, but it's a
So do I.
jaunt. It's a jaunt to get an Uber to get home from that. But yeah, networking with people, I think you're going to find people that love to answer questions or want to help, because I think generally people are good natured like that. And the other thing I would say too, because I think opposite side of the coin, a thing I would suggest is to be upfront with the person that you're asking to mentor you. If you might have a friendship and or however that develops and you say, hey, can you help me out, or can you be my mentor? Maybe that's the path that you go to formally ask them that. Don't be discouraged or offended if somebody isn't able to mentor you. I once had a guy that got really pissed off because I had offered him some advice, but I didn't have the time that I thought he deserved to mentor him. My wife was stationed across the country. Like I said, she was in the Army. And so I was essentially a single dad of a 4 and 14-year-old kids, and I was trying to hold things down, working and pursuing my own education, my bachelor degree. I couldn't give him what I thought he needed. I had absolutely no problem answering questions at the time, but just understand, don't get frustrated or upset at somebody should they not be able to mentor you, because I think given the opportunity, given the time and everything else, I think a lot of people, like I said, are really good natured and they want to help you if they can.
Yeah, no, definitely, Chad, and it's such a vital part. It makes a big difference, my friend. And yeah, do you
Yeah.
know what, Chad? It's like if I don't know. I think sometimes, like some people do get annoyed about stuff, and people do need to remember that you have got a life as well. I get it on LinkedIn where people are like bombarding me, and I actually I did a post about it earlier. I actually sectioned some time off yesterday to just get back to people and stuff like that. It is hard, so I think don't be offended if people can't do everything. People do have stuff going on outside of work. We're really accessible these days because of things like LinkedIn and stuff like that. But I think ask away, take what you can get, and I think mentors can come in different ways, whether it's in person, whether it's through following different people on LinkedIn or on YouTube and stuff like that. They can come in lots of different ways, can't they?
Yeah. My wife's favorite line is give some grace. There was a thing totally unrelated, but a post on social media where a parent was saying, when the light turns green, you need to go. But understand the flip side of it is you've got a new driver or new drivers driving to high school. You certainly want to teach them, make sure intersections are clear, give them a little bit of grace, understand that just because you're in a hurry doesn't mean that somebody's doing something to upset you, right? Certainly they're probably not setting out to ruffle your feathers for the day. And so give a little bit of grace, understand that people are in different situations. And if you have that kind of understanding and mentality, I think that it's going to go a long way. There's plenty of people out there that want to mentor, that want to help and give their guidance. So it's out there. I've done some webinars in the past, talked to a few higher education audiences. And before I moved up where I'm currently living, I spent a few years volunteering as a mentor for the U.S. Cyber Patriot program. So that's put on by the U.S. Air Force Association, and purpose to train middle school and high school kids in securing computer systems. So more of the blue team side of the house. But they participate in an annual competition every year, students across the country, and I think beyond the country now. Like, I think outside of the United States, they might have opened it up. I'm not for sure on that, but it's an awesome opportunity to help shape, train, motivate new generations of IT professionals. And I've made a few phone calls when I moved up here to try to identify who's in charge of or who coordinates that in the schools in this area. I haven't gotten anybody, but I do look forward to being able to get back to that and serve as a mentor. And the good thing about that is, at least where I was volunteering, it was at a community college, and you had the main organizer, and then you had other people that were helping mentor. So if you want to pop in for half an hour each time that they meet, or a full hour or two, or you only want to do it one day a week or every couple of weeks as a mentor, they can use all the help they can get. I think that don't say, I can't do 3 times a week, 2 hours a night, so I'm not going to do it. Do what you can when you can do it, but you're going to know what that threshold is and what you have going on in your life. Anyways, good organization to look into if somebody's looking to even provide mentorship to somebody.
Yeah, cool, Chad. And I think a lot of people, like yourself, you get to a certain stage in your career where you do just you are willing to help out. I think if people are willing to ask a few people, I don't think it's too challenging. I think that feeling you've clearly got now I think is echoed across the industry. But Chad, mate, thanks for your time. If people do want to reach out to you and stuff, is LinkedIn, is that the best place to get hold of you if people want to ask you any questions or ask for any advice or anything like that?
Yeah, it's probably the best way. LinkedIn is probably the best way. I don't spend too much time on other social media. Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you, mate. Are we about covered? Anything else I should have asked you that I haven't, or do you think we've about nailed it? Or?
I think that if you're looking at the management aspect of it, you've done the security, the hands-on, and you're moving into management. I think that be a servant leader, lead by example. Make sure that you have your team's back and they'll have yours. When your team understands that you have their best interest in mind, that's when that dynamic, gets naturally formed. And I think that's the best way to lead a team.
Note to finish on, mate. Thanks again, my friend. Really enjoyed that there. Lots of value for the listeners, and I'm sure we'll speak again soon, buddy.
Absolutely. Thanks, Thomas. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, man.